Good evening and welcome to Metrofocus. I'm Rafael P. Roman. A number of Republicans have already announced their plans to run for president in 2024, but almost all of them have been reluctant to consistently attack the frontrunner in the race, former President Donald Trump. But there is one candidate who seems eager to go on the offensive against Trump, and that is former New Jersey Governor Christie, who has publicly stated that he is running not only to win, but also to ensure that Donald Trump loses. Christie, who has gone from one of Trump's earliest mainstream supporters to one of his harshest critics, recently described the former president as a loser and has publicly questioned Trump's fitness for elected office. What explains Governor Christie's changed attitude toward Donald Trump? And during this presidential campaign, will he be more than just a guided missile rhetorically aimed at Donald Trump, as David French of the New York Times has put it? Could he actually win? Joining us now to answer these and other questions is Metrofocus contributor and anchor of State of Affairs on WNET and NJPBS, the one, the only, Steve Adubato. Steve, welcome back to the show.
But what do I do after that introduction, Raf? It's good to see you, my friend.
Just be fabulous, I guess. Should be easy.
Thanks for putting pressure on me. Let's talk Christie.
All right. You know, I don't know anyone who has interviewed Christie more often than you have. The most recent interview was in April. So as far as you can tell, why is he running for president again? Does he really think that he has a shot at the nomination this time?
Every time I think, Raf, that I know Christie, I realize that I don't. And reading his mind is virtually impossible. But my gut tells me that Christie believes that if he can get on a debate stage, head to head, yeah, there'll be other candidates. But if he has a chance to engage Donald Trump, he can take him on, he can embarrass him, he can gain in the polls where, right as we do this taping, he's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% at tops. He believes he can turn this entire Republican presidential primary upside down. That's what he believes. He has that much confidence in himself.
Well, he didn't do any of that in 2016, and he was in a debate stage with Trump, wasn't he? But how do you respond to those who argue or who say that this is all a grudge match? He almost said it. He wants one of the things that he wants most of all is to have Trump lose. That it's a grudge and it's payback for his not having been named vice president by Trump or attorney general back in 2016. And even some say because he blames Trump for giving him the case of COVID that almost killed him. What do you say to all that?
Do I think it's personal? Yes, I do. Do I think there's a grudge? Yes, I do. But it's also Christie's way of saying, and you're absolutely right, Raf, to go back for a second, Christie was on the stage in 2016 with Trump, but in his mind and in the mind of all those other candidates, they didn't want to take Trump on directly. And the only one who I believe, and you've interviewed Christie as much as I have, frankly, you know that Christie could have, if he chose to, but he did not take on Trump. He knows it was a mistake. They didn't take him seriously until it was too late. Now, going back to the grudge, it is personal in my view. It is very real. There's a vendetta here, but I also believe, again, I'll repeat myself, Christie thinks he can take Donald Trump down, and that is his goal, even if he is not ultimately, Christie, the Republican nominee. He wants to take Trump down.
Well, as I said, you know, he has been the harshest candidate so far towards Trump by far. Why does he think that's a winning strategy in a Republican Party whose base is arguably now basically made up of Trump supporters, MAGA supporters?
You know, I got to tell you, Raf, how many more indictments need to come down on Donald Trump? How much more evidence? How many more facts? How much more has to happen for Donald Trump to lose his base? I don't see it, Raf. I really don't.
Right.
You and I are not big on political prognostication. We try to talk about policy and issues. But when it comes to politics and a constituency, Trump is not losing that 30, 35%. He's not losing it. You have multiple candidates in the field, including Christie. I don't see Trump's base of support falling apart. And I think if Christie believes that that's going to happen, I think he's mistaken.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, although now he is his harshest critics, as we know, as we've kind of touched on, he was a big supporter, the first mainstream supporter, much to the consternation of some of Christie's supporters back in 2016. Are the powerful Republicans and never Trumpers going to forget and forgive that?
I think Christie made a mistake. I really do. I think he made a calculated mistake. Look, I could go back to 2012 and say that was his best time to run. But when Chris Christie says it wasn't right for him, he wasn't ready to be president, Raph, frankly, I defer to him. Only he knows himself. Only he knows his family situation. That was his best time politically, but it didn't work for him to run against Barack Obama. By 2016, things had happened. Yeah. Bridgegate had happened. Yeah. The photo on the beach with the beach closed happened. The hug, which Christie argues was never really a hug with Barack Obama during Hurricane Sandy getting federal help, it happened. Whether people think it happened or not, in the minds of many it did. Republicans, so-called MAGA Republicans, will never, in my view, ever forgive Chris Christie for what they perceive he did wrong. I personally think there was a lot of leadership involved during Sandy, but that's not the way MAGA Republicans see it.
Yeah. Well, Governor Christie likes to tout the fact that he was a Republican governor in a deeply blue state who managed to get a lot done in a bipartisan way. Is that an accurate assessment of his time as governor?
I say yes. Ref, you and I were anchoring our program, Capitol Report, looking at state public policy issues. And we would analyze how Christie, together with the Senate president at the time, Steve Sweeney, a Democrat, right, a conservative, moderate Democrat, they worked together on pension reform. They worked together on a whole range of issues on fiscal conservatism, if you will. They worked together on so many things. But here's the problem, Raph. Working together with Democrats, compromising, getting things done does not seem to appeal to the Republican constituency that is going to dictate who the Republican nominee is. Yeah. They're not into compromise. They are not into working with Democrats. They are into, quote, get the libs. That's not what Chris Christie is all about. And so it may not work out what he thinks he's able to do with this constituency. Timing's off, constituency's off. It's a different Republican Party.
All right. So besides touting his ability to be a bipartisan, to reach across the aisle, which, as you say, may or may not be a good thing in the primary, probably not. You're probably right.
It's a good thing for government, Raph. Yeah. It's a good thing for government getting things done.
Of course. But for him and for winning the nomination, and aside from going after Trump, is there one issue, or is there a cluster of issues that he's campaigning for or on?
It's very simple. You said it in the introduction, Raph. Chris Christie's main argument, beyond the issue of integrity or lack thereof that is perceived by many regarding Donald Trump, beyond all the criminal charges, civil charges, the charges that may come in the future, Chris Christie's main argument, Raph, is Donald Trump is a loser. He lost one election after another. This is Christie's argument, do you want to lose again? It's technically correct. But if that MAGA base, I'm a broken record now, Raph, if that 35% believes whether he wins or loses, they're going to stay with Trump, it doesn't matter what Christie says. But he's technically correct that Donald Trump has been a loser starting before 2020 in the midterm elections, a big-time loser for the Republican Party.
Now, it's difficult to talk about Christie's current presidential campaign without bringing up Bridgegate, which you already have. And that was the thing, I think you'll agree, that probably torpedoes his 2016 campaign long before it started. Could you summarize what Bridgegate entailed for us, and tell us if you think it's likely to impact his campaign this time?
There's Bridgegate, and then there's Chris Christie's, the way he frames Bridgegate. And I don't really know what ultimately happened. To be clear, Chris Christie was never charged in the Bridgegate case, but there were people close to him, some of his closest aides. He says they were not very close aides. Yeah. They were
the person indicted, and the two people convicted. All three of them said that he was in on it from the beginning. But of course, he's always said he's innocent, and he wasn't charged with anything, as you said.
And Chris Christie says his greatest crime, and I don't mean a criminal crime, his greatest mistake was, quote, trusting people that were in his orbit, if you will, his staff. The argument is simply this, or the case is this, that the George Washington Bridge was closed down for several hours. As you and the world know, Raph, it was closed down because the mayor of Fort Lee, New Jersey, whose name is not even relevant right now, did not support Chris Christie. And because Fort Lee is right by the bridge, as political retribution, they were going to close down the bridge and pay him back for not supporting Christie. And it caused havoc. It caused a horrible traffic jam. It caused way worse than that. And there was a case involved. Criminal charges were brought, and it was a terrible embarrassment. Bridgegate was a black mark on the Christie administration, even though Christie says it wasn't him and he didn't know. Those involved in the case and were ultimately convicted said he did. It doesn't look good, never looked good, and never will.
Yeah, and it's not going to go away, right?
No, because a lot of things people forget in politics, Raf. That's not something you forget anytime soon.
Yeah, something else you don't forget, which you've already brought up, and much less important, of course, than Bridgegate, was Beachgate. And of course, that's when in the 4th of July weekend in 2017, actually, where he was photographed lounging, catching some rays on the beach, on a public beach, when he had closed all the public beaches for all other New Jerseyans because of a budget dispute with the legislature. And when he was confronted with that, when he was asked, what do you say to other New Jerseyans who would have liked to have been on the beach? He said, they should run for governor. That's pretty funny. But, we've known Christie for a long time. In fact, we were the first to interview him on TV, and we were.
Sure were.
I remember that after the
as U.S. attorney, right, Raf?
Right, yeah. And we said, this guy's got political skills. That Christie would not have done something like this. What happened?
Raf, to his credit, and too late in my view, he acknowledged that it was a mistake to be on that beach, not just to be photographed on the beach, but to be on that beach at that time when other New Jerseyans could not enjoy the beach. But at the time, Raf, as you very accurately described, he pushed back. Well, basically said, if you were the governor, you could do it too. That's a let them eat cake mentality. And that does not, again, I'm a student of leadership, mostly because I make a lot of mistakes as a leader.
That sticks with people.
But I wish Christie had just said, I screwed up. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been on the beach. Forget about the fact that the photo was taken. I shouldn't have been on the beach. It was wrong. And I think he could have turned it around, but he didn't do that. And that only added to the Bridgegate situation. Not a good look.
All right. We only have 15 seconds left. What will be his biggest contribution in this campaign, win or lose?
I think he's going to take a few big chunks out of Donald Trump. I don't know if Trump ever gets on that debate stage with him, but if he does, I bet on Christie nicking him up pretty bad, and we'll see what happens after that. But he's going to go down fighting. I know Christie that way.
All right. Okay. We're going to have to end it there, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, it's been a pleasure and a lot of fun.
My honor, as always, Ref.